stuff coming on. I'm going to hand it over to Yvonne. Really looking forward to Yvonne's talk tonight. So, yes, there we go.
Right then, hello. So at home, I'm going to project and use my diaphragm and make sure that everyone can hear me. Can you hear me in the back of the room? Yes, you do not need microphones. So this is about power of story. So I don't expect anyone to be necessarily a writer in this room, but you're all here because you're interested, I presume, in the essence of narrative and what story is about. So, in the beginning, when the world was a place of fear and danger, when carnivores roamed free that could eat a human in one gulp like a chicken nugget, fire was your friend. Around that fire, our ancestors sat. In essence, the same as us, but hairier and with worse teeth. With this added layer of protection, of warmth, a sense of security, came the words. And our language developed as our understanding of the world advanced. Stories shaped the people we were then, and in our creation and delivery of those stories, we controlled what was known and what was going to be known. The past cast its narrative shadow over the present. And it was a huge, powerful force, this storytelling. The essence of the spoken word, beginning from somewhere deep in our collective subconscious, the need, the driving intention to show, to explain, to understand the world around us and ultimately ourselves. Creating stories and shaping them with our own kind is the beating heart of what makes us human. And it separates us from those creatures that want to eat us. In the creation and sharing of stories, we unite and we form friendships, families, tribes. A well-known, well-shared story forms a connective tissue around those that relate to that story. And so alliances, understandings, connections and collaborations are born. From ancient times of fire gazing, listening to an elder, relate the adventures of Beowulf or Jason and the Argonauts, right up to our time, as the Gogglebox families gather around their sets on their various sofas to share the output from our television age. The sharing of stories and our engagement with them threads through our collective consciousness. We are human, so we tell stories. So where did I begin? I cut my teeth on creating and delivering stories for television on EastEnders back in the early 1990s, when only spoiled rich soap stars had mobile phones and Ross Kemp still had hair. So excuse this indulgence, but I want to share with you a paragraph or two from my book, Writing for Television, serials and soaps, to put into context what I'm going to be talking about this evening. And it says here to read from page 13, so that's what I'm going to do. Wade Richard is staring at me. She has her hand on her hip and she's pulling the sort of face my Uncle George would say was like a bulldog chewing a wasp. I am in trouble, and I know it, and she knows it. There are other script editors, 3 of them, in the room. Barbara, Colin and Hattie, and they're all staring at me too. All of them, without exception, thinking, thank God it's not me. I stare back at Wendy. Hard. I swear I can hear Hattie snort a nervous laugh back of her nose, while Colin tries to do a very good impression of a radiator. Well, Wendy's gimlet stare takes no prisoners. Yes, I answer querulously. Where the fuck is my script? Repeats Wendy, Her expression now synonymous with the one Pauline Fowler gave her tumble dryer when it broke down. Irritation, frustration, and a big dollop of anger. Another seemingly endless pause, during which, out of the heat of mental and physical paralysis that has overcome me since Wendy invaded my private space, an idea begins to form of what I could say to alleviate this situation. Go away. Yeah, I said that. I had other more complex thoughts, like a pretty detailed explanation of why her script was late finding its way to her pigeonhole in the green room. I couldn't sign off until my producer had okayed the last changes, and she couldn't do that until she'd read and done the same on the episode before mine. And she couldn't do that until the rewrites of the previous episode had come in, but they were due that morning, and we just heard that the writer had to go to a funeral. So we were actually just about to have a meeting to finish the scene after the second act break so we could push the whole thing forward, but I didn't say any of that. I just told Wendy Richard, matriarch of the most successful soap on telly, to go away. It was like farting for the Queen, you just didn't do it. So what is the DNA of story? It was a baptism of fire, working on EastEnders back in that day. But it was on that fast-moving, gargantuan show that I learned all I still use today in my daily life as a script consultant, developing scripts of writers out of my company, Script Advice. EastEnders was then, and still is now, a story-producing factory. And it's that mindset that you need to adopt in order to survive the relentless demands of the story-eating machine. That is, a soap transmitted as it was then, twice a week, doubling now to 4 times a week transmission power. I've also worked on Coronation Street and developed numerous series formats with writers like Sally Wainwright, the writer of Happy Valley and Gentleman Jack, Russell T Davies, the recreator of Doctor Who and Years, Kay Miller, writer of many TV dramas, Fat Friends, The Syndicate, to name just a couple. I learned from these writers how a writer's brain works, how they approach their own writing, and I learned how to create and shape creative and commercial storytelling for television. Ultimately, I ended up producing Holby City. My series was BAFTA nominated, thank you, and latterly Crossroads. My series was at, thank you. You see, you win some and you lose some. The long-running narrative, the series story, is my thing. This is what I understand. It's how to create from scratch a story that would span the distance of more than one episode, be it for a soap, like EastEnders, or a series like Holby City. There's a skill to creating a story that will not only deliver a powerful emotional punch, but also, as a direct result, create engagement and ultimately enjoy a loyalty from that audience. And coming up with stories that can do that consistently is a tough job. In this world of multi-platform and lots of choice, audiences are savvy, intelligent and informed these days. They're also fickle, and they switch allegiance in the second it takes them to flick over to another channel or viewing platform. So it's vital then that in this world of story, we need to create them that have got the DNA built right through them. And what is that? During my time as a script editor at the BBC, and then later as a producer at Granada Television, we talked all the time about story. For us, it was the job of creating long-running story ideas that would span at least a 6-parter, that is 6 hours of television. All series starts this way, from an idea through a process of discussion and development, then finally to make it to a full script. Although my particular experience is focused on television drama creation and production, the business of story and how to handle it well goes across all genres, all narrative formats. There is a common language, a phraseology, that comes as part of the package of being the person that works with writers. As a newbie at the BBC, back in the early 1990s, I couldn't believe I was getting paid more than I'd ever earned in 20 years of my life, sitting around a big table talking about Doc Cotton's journey. The business of creating believable storylines for characters millions of people felt they knew personally, week in, week out, makes you very good, very quickly, at recognising a good idea early on and grabbing it and shaping it to deliver the best emotional impact. Spend any time with a writer or a person who works with them, and you will hear phrases like the character's journey, the peaks and troughs, the emotional landscape. It is no accident that a lot of the language around the business of story creation and production refers to a journey, a path, a track our characters take. The original storyteller, Homer, not the Simpsons guy, the Greek guy, he wrote the epic poem The Odyssey about Odysseus, a man on a long and arduous journey, a spiritual quest. And to an extent, our modern day stories form that similar shape. And mirroring that journey, as our protagonist puts one story foot in front of the other, the landscape in which they walk affects and impacts on their experience. And in return, and in another mirror, the character's reaction to the landscape and what they encounter changes and shapes the world they live in. And finally, in a third mirror, reading the story or watching it unfold, we, the audience, are affected and engaged. All great stories, all great television stories, have this shape and this impact. So, bear with me. This is my rather rubbish drawing of. So, the idea of the story path, simple as you like. So here you start off, you're the character in anything, in any drama that you might even be thinking about now. Think of your favourite drama. There's always a point where they start off, and it's called the inciting incident. Something occurs to them that sets them off on their journey. And so they do, literally one narrative foot in front of the other. It is no reason, there is no accident why we call it a storyline. It's a line of the narrative that goes through the series. We are pulling it forward, as writers, we are pulling that forward incrementally, step by step, through scenes that become whole episodes. And here's the journey, and we're going on. This is called a story peak. I've only managed to get 2 on my rubbish little sketchbook, but when I work with writers in a TV hour format, I expect them to create at least 5 of these. I don't know why, odd numbers work better than even. So you're building the story to various peaks throughout the span of the episode. And when you think of it like that, an audience won't know that, the Gogglebox audience won't know that, but they'll go, oh my God, and remember that bit, and then that happened, and then that happened. These peaks, and we the writers orchestrating that journey of the character to make the audience do exactly that. So here are the peaks. Here's a story trough. This is where you want to throw the worst thing at the character, and so they go in a slew, they go down. And we're with them, we're going down with them. Oh my God, will they manage to crawl up, metaphorically, that trough? Yes, they will, because here's the finish flag and we're waving that. And that's at the end of episode 6 or 10 or wherever it is. Thanks for putting up with my trouble. Right. Oh. Yeah, so it's a creative business, this story structure. This story creation. It's a creative business. But it's also a very structural business. When we talk about creating and shaping story, we refer into physical geographical structures such as mountain peaks or valley dips or troughs. But these are metaphorical, unless you're doing a series about mountain climbing. In the business of story creation, structure is king, and particularly in television. As the story takes shape, so it must be controlled and guided through an increasingly challenging terrain. All of this is to ensure utter concentration and engagement from a fickle and sophisticated audience. So, 25 years in the business, I eventually came up with something which actually made sense to me, which I transfer to my writers all the time. So this is the idea of the micro versus the macro. There are two very distinct things going on here. As we engage with the story, the characters that populate it, we are aware subliminally of what I refer to in my work as the micro view. This is the viewpoint of the world as seen through the eyes of the character in question. The macro view is that which is represented by the bigger picture, the world as the backdrop against the series that plays out within it. In a drama like Holby City, for instance, the macro view would be that of the hospital, the day-to-day running, the daily grind. The micro view would be that of the patients coming through those double doors, with the complaint that forms the story of the week. From their eyes, we see the hospital and its staff, and we learn about them from this perspective. Similarly, the hospital staff, forming the backdrop of the story for our patients, also have a micro view. It is that from their point of view that we see the hospital, and coming through the doors, the patients that they're going to have to work with. So the micro and the macro view switches and changes throughout the hour of television, of drama, and that constant shift is what creates dynamics and the engagement which we want as story makers. We want to grab that audience and keep them, and that's the fulcrum that's going on there. Here's another terrible picture. Right. When I talk about story structure with my writers, I use visuals as much as possible. Not nearly as candid as this, but you know. Right, so this is a bicycle wheel. All stories are cyclical. A character, Michael, will you hold this for me? Oh, okay. Just hold the book, right, so that everyone can see. It's my lovely assistant. Hold it up. Like I said, right. All stories are cyclical. A character goes on a journey and they learn something about themselves via the people they meet and the events that happen to them, which they have either created themselves or that which is thrust upon them. They end their journey having learned a lesson about themselves and their life in general. At the centre of this world is a smaller circle, and in that sits the main character or group of characters, and it is from their point of view, their perspective, that we see the world. From them, all story begins, like spokes in a wheel, coming out from them and hitting the edge of the world in which they sit. And that exchange, if you like, goes forward, and it can also come back and hit the solar plexus. Thank you, there. We are essentially all storytellers. If a child wants to tell you something that happened to them at school, or on the bus, or on the nursery, notice how there will always be an innate structure in the telling of this thing that happened. There will be a beginning, there will be a middle, and there'll be an end. Simply put, it's a 3-act structure. This is a really simple explanation of that. Inciting incident, the thing that happens that starts you on the journey. Exploration, the big middle bit. This is all the bit where you're trying to work stuff out and people are coming in left, right and centre and what's the world about. And then the end point. Oh my God, I realise what I've done now. So here's an example of a simple 3-act structure. Act 1. I wanted to sit on my own, but Claire made me move my bag because Trish wanted to sit next to her, but she wasn't in Claire's good books because of that thing she said about her nan. Act 2. So I had to listen to Claire tell me all about her guinea pigs, and I wasn't interested. But I didn't know how to say that, so I just drew this massive horse in the condensation on the window. And I think, because I wasn't really listening to her, Claire told me that it was rubbish, and actually it wasn't. Claire has a really loud voice, and Trish heard her and told her off, and they had a big argument, and then the bus driver yelled, "Stop that!" and he pulled up to the next stop, and he didn't move the bus until they stopped tearing each other's hair out. Act 3. So then Trish sat next to me, and Claire sat on her own, like I wanted to do in the first place. And that's why I'm late. It's all Claire's fault. In that example, the middle act, Act 2, is longer than the opening Act 1 and the closing Act 3. And this is often the case in story structure. The middle point of the narrative is where the story does most of its travelling, where exploration is found and revelations are revealed. In television, we use a 5-act structure. This used to be dictated by where the ad break fell in a commercial episode for terrestrial television. So when I was working at ITV, the power of a commercial break had a massive impact over the story structure. But we've come a long way relatively quickly since the days of drama only being shown on terrestrial channels. Now there are many platforms on which to view story, and the rigours of commercial breaks no longer dictate the story structure of an episode. Statistics show that older people watch the terrestrial channels. The youngsters are mainlining Netflix and Amazon and Sky. We need now to create stories that deliver maximum impact via the streaming platforms available. And thankfully, the tips and tricks I use to ensure audiences returned after the ad break are much the same as those employed by drama producers who want to ensure their audiences watch yet another episode. Binge watching is the order of our storytelling today, and these tricks really work. A good story has 3 essential things. It has a hook, it has a twist, and it will have a cliffhanger. A lot of the language of story development does what it says on the tin. So the hook in a storyline will be that moment where an audience is literally hooked into the next stage of the story. It will come at the end of an act and ensure there is a strong coupling from one act to the next. All the time, an audience's attention is required to be focused on the episode in question. As I mentioned earlier, there's much to distract us in this modern world of too much choice. The twist happens halfway through the second act. This is a plot twist, an unexpected event or reveal, something that gives the story a renewed energy. So we now go into Act 3, and halfway through that, there's another twist, which jettisons that story into the 4th act, hooking into the 5th and the final act. And there will be the cliffhanger, bringing the storyline to an explosive or visually engaging or revelatory climax. Just for now, because of course, we want the audience to watch another episode immediately, or make an appointment to view the next one. How do we use story in our daily lives? I've worked with story and writers for 25 years. Telling a good story is part of what makes me, me. Think I can write a good tale, as well as put one over verbally. There's a knack to telling even an anecdotal story. You've probably all been there at some point. There's a member of your group hell-bent on telling a tale they believe is both hilarious and informative, but in the telling of it, the time ticks by. There's tumbleweed rolling across the metaphorical acreage of unfunny, boring facts that this poor person is doling out amongst, while all the while oblivious to the teeth clenching and the toe curling and the nail biting going on amongst their captive audience. I hope that's not happening to me now. This is because, more often than not, what is thought to be a story is in fact not. It could be a situation, an event, an isolated moment in time. It can be a fragment of a big tale, but not the tale itself. What constitutes a proper story is any tale with a beginning. There has to be a constructed middle, and it needs a firm and definite ending. And most importantly, when all the journeying is done, the story must make us feel or think differently. It must have a message, and that is where subtext comes in. If you think now of any drama you have seen recently, film, TV series, or perhaps a book you just finished reading, does it stay with you, this story? And if it does, what does it tell you? What does it make you feel? The text of a story is another word for plot. The plot is what happens, the action we see, either in our mind's eye, if we're reading a story, or on screen if we're watching it. The plot is essential in order for us to feel we are on a journey. Things are happening, the landscape is changing, but the plot alone does not make a good story. Plot needs its companion, subtext. Subtext is what a character feels but does not say. Subtext is the driving force behind the plot that we are watching, and as we do, there is a subliminal message going into our subconscious. This is why she's doing that. I know how she feels. Oh, I'd like to help. Or I don't want to be anywhere near her or any of this, but I must keep watching. Subtext, and it's working in collaboration with text, ensures there is a message created and released by the narrative. And we therefore are fully engaged and right in the moment too with that character on screen. Subtext is the energy, the food that makes the muscle of the plot work. So two have to work together. All good storytelling is an invitation to feel, to question, to align with or against, to basically make a personal choice, to empathise and react. That is why stories from modern times, like Killing Eve, right to a time back before television, when those fires burned, and the spoken word was all we had, that is why story creates division. There are three components that are vital to create a powerful story. It has to have structure. There needs to be a strong, definite intention, and then it needs to be delivered visually and powerfully. Every successful and therefore powerful storyline, I'm going to talk about storyline now, but it's the same story in that I suppose the difference is you can sum up the story in its encapsulation, but a storyline is really that journey that you're unfurling as a writer through those increments I mentioned earlier. So imagine it like a ribbon being pulled out. So the storyline will have a clear and consciously conceived connection to the central character that carries that storyline and the episode as a whole. Remember, that character's in the middle of the bicycle wheel. character delivers storyline, always. Character is the story. Storyline also shapes character. So the two is a symbiotic relationship. Both jobs are present and done well in a storyline that ultimately will engage and resonate with the audience. The character is created with the intention to carry that storyline, and the storyline is created to shape and mould the character. In the weight of that story, that character will be changed. It's symbiotic, this relationship. Powerful, savvy, successful storyline writers. There are few and far between, by the way. They mainly exist in series and soaps. They understand the power of character and the way the subtext of the character literally drives the storyline through the duration of not only the single episode, but all of the series as a whole. Think of Sally Wainwright's series Happy Valley. I presume people in the room have seen it. Nodding, good. So here's Catherine Kaywood in Happy Valley. She's complex, she's emotionally troubled, she's funny, she's strong, she's angry, she's loving. In 2 words, she cares. So we do. Her storylines are professionally centric, but personally focused. We engage via the plotline of her police work, the procedural nature of it, as well as via her dialect, her particular way of interacting with her peer group, her take on her valley, which is the micro view, her world view, the micro view, underpinning the valley itself, the macro view. Sally Wainwright digs into the storyline via Catherine Kaywood's point of view. There she sits at the centre of that bicycle wheel, but not only each episode, but the series as a whole. So that's the intention of Sally Wainwright, the writer, creating Happy Valley. Here's the delivery. Always, the key to a powerful storyline is the one that sticks in the mind of the audience. Television is a very visual medium. Savvy writers engage the visual in shaping and delivering their storylines. And by visual, I don't just mean a stunt, an explosion, or a rockfall. These have their place. But I was thinking more about an image, how a whole storyline can be summed up. And this is sometimes down to just the writer. But when all the powerful, successful buttons are pressed commercially, I refer to the dual role, the director and the writer. Back in the day when I was developing series at Granada Television with writers like Russell and Sally Wainwright, there was an emphasis on the set piece. A set piece combines 3 essential, commercial, and therefore powerful and successful components. Structure, intention and delivery. And it's when that plot line, complete with the strong undertow of subtext, collides with the action and behaviour of a core character, it results in a sort of hiatus moment, visual, narrative-driven and character-imbued moment that sits almost in its own bubble within the episode. If you think about any episode of Happy Valley, which is, by the way, marvellous, series 1 and 2, there's several set pieces. And it's like I mentioned before about the peaks, there will be about 5 set pieces. These are where I say the visual aspect of the scene will combine with the subtext in that scene and also marry with the plot that's going on. It will reveal character. It will somehow encapsulate the whole series, weirdly. And there are several set pieces in Sally's work. She knows what she's doing. One of the ones I could just remember off the top of my head in series 1 was when we have the horrible psychotic guy, gone now. I can't remember his name, Harry's name. Anyway, he's on barge. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Nod. Yeah. Good. He's on the barge and he's got the kid, her kid, Catherine Kaywood's grandson, and we're like, oh, he's going to do something horrible, and it really is going to do something horrible. And she's on the way, and we're thinking, yeah, she's the saviour, and she falls. And, you know, you think she's never going to get there, but she does. But it's that scene in particular that sums up the horror of Happy Valley. It sums up the character. It sums up the drive, the subtext of Catherine Kaywood, and the text of thing whose name I can't remember. It's very interesting. If you watch this now, watch television, and when you next engage in drama and think, where's the set piece, you'll remember it. You'll know it when you see it. Of course, not all of us are writers. Heaven help us if we were. But I believe all of us have our own stories to tell, and do it in lots of different ways, in small, daily doses of just being human. I think true happiness lies at finding yourself in the centre of your own bicycle wheel, with your loved ones sharing that space. The world of work and industry loops around you, the big picture. The macro view is the one that you have carved out of by living and experience and just growing. When my mum died in April 2018, I wanted to write something that could be shared at her funeral. My point of view of her. My micro view. And it was in doing that I realised that she, all the time that I was living in the world when she was in it, had always been at the centre of my bicycle wheel. And from her, all spokes came. Story structure is never far from life, and the living of it, in my view. Who we are, our inner lives and what we show to the world, our outer lives, are two very different entities. In my work with writers, I try to bring about an authentic voice, a combination of that which makes the writer write, which is their subtext, and that which the writer wants us to know, which is the text or the plot. Finding an authentic voice in life and in writing are one and the same thing to my mind. And it is the use of our authentic voice that we find true peace of mind and can spread that outwards. Thank you.
If anyone wants to ask you any questions, yeah. Do you watch telly in the same way, by the chance?
No, I don't watch telly with.
Oh, no, damn.
Oh, that's a hole in that plot.
Yeah.
I can see that a mile off.
That ruins for me, that one.
What's been your favourite storyline that you've written?
The one I really, one is going back away, but so when I started on EastEnders, there was just 3 soaps. And it was between Coronation Street and EastEnders. That was the fight, that was the battle. Sometimes we won it, sometimes the street won it. And there was only Brookside. And even Emmerdale, but no one took Emmerdale seriously then. So, yeah, the storyline I helped create was the one with the Mitchell brothers. So it was Grant, Phil, and Sharon. And Sharon was married to Grant. But Grant had committed GBH and was in prison,
Yes.
like you do, and Sharon and Phil had an affair. And me and Tony Jordan, who was one of the regular writers of this soap at the time, created this storyline where it was his idea that she would have this affair, and that I was a script editor working with Tony, and we basically pulled the whole thing out for a full year. And at the end, it was quite magical actually. The way we revealed, you know, because the audience were like, will Grant ever find out? And he comes out of prison, oh, the brother, you know, and it's all, wait, Vic, and everyone's going, woo, celebration. And we managed to make a recording, that was it, she recorded their affair, the tryst. And so that episode where the audience knew that it was going to be revealed, got 22 million people watching it. I mean, that's unheard of now. So I suppose that was one of my favourites. I was thinking, oh, I'll do that. as soon as I get in my orbit, as it were, I'm going, right, let's slice this up into blocks and chunks so I know where I am. Because a lot of novelists will just say, oh, I like spending time with my characters, I don't know where they're going to take me. I'm like, literally that is an anathema to me. I'm like, what? Why would you want to do that? Why would you not plot within an inch of their life what's going to happen to them? Oh, I don't buy into this. Oh, the muse is going to hit me and I don't know where it's going to lead me. That, frankly, is a load of bobbins. So, yeah, novels are great, and nowadays producers are looking for more and more to novels for fresh
ideas.
Yeah, like Killing Eve was originally a novel. So it's that type of, you still have to structure it, and this is what I was saying earlier, you still have to have those, I would start off with the 3 main body blocks of story, and then we would make it more complicated and from there, but everything essentially is, I think, narrative, no matter what the genre, it's all about communicating clearly. This is what I was saying about intention. You have to have, as a writer, the intention is to communicate. So you need to know the end point. Don't tell me you don't know the end point, because you're the only one that's in control of it. You are orchestrating the release of that information. And this is why television works incrementally. Minute by minute. You literally build a point, a storyline to a peak and let it drop off. We know, the producers like me, we know what the audience are going to be doing. We do it cynically, it's terrible. But we have to do that, and if you don't do that, you don't get the ratings. And as we know, television's all about ratings.
We love a bit of high drama, don't we?
We do.
So,
Yes.
each chapter was a
Yeah. And here's another thing. Every minute does. Honestly. I used to read, not to Michael, we haven't done this actually. Hello. Past your bedtime. I used to read to my nephews, now 20-something, the Harry Potter stories. And because I'm just built-in script editor, and no one had the audacity to script edit J.K. Rowling, she writes so much extraneous bobbins. I'm literally piling through it, and I would literally speed read and go, that can go. So let's just stick to the plot. Let's just keep that plot moving. So I think, in answer to that question, every minute that character is living needs to have an intention, an exploration, and then to end at some point. So the 3 beats work in tiny increments and also across huge series arcs.
Who have you been? Sorry, no, go ahead. Who have you been inspired by recently, just watching story-wise?
I wish I was Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I wish I was her. Not least because she's got a flat chest. That's always an advantage. I'd like in another life to have done things differently and written feedback. Sorry, you had your hand.
I was just going to say, what's the most common problem you see when you read a script?
There's loads.
Yeah.
If it's a newish, I don't work with really green writers, but if you're a bit inexperienced and you've done a few scripts and you want me to help, often writers overwrite. That's probably the most, even J.K. Rowling overwrites. What it is people fear, a writer of television tends to fear an audience's understanding of their work, so they're sort of explaining, too much explaining, exposition, too much of that. And what I always say is you get in to a scene late, always later than you think, and leave it before you think you should leave it. So there's always that, so you condense time, and that's how you keep that going. Television's relentless.
Kind of following on from that, when you're writing a soap, is it hard, when you've got characters that have been saying EastEnders for 20 years, is it hard going from one writer to the next writer because you're trying to pick up somebody else's?
That's a really good question, and one of the things as a producer when I was on Holby, and it's not the Cambridge to mention it as a soap, it's relentless, it's still the factory format. When I was on Holby, one of the hardest things was to get the episodes to have an individual voice, so nothing's too bland, but also so sort of it looks like it should be in the Holby family. That is hard. That is hard to do. But I suppose what it is, you need the overview. You need to be able to nail the producer needs to be able to nail the tone of it and know exactly what that means. And then basically the job of the script editor is to make those writers deliver to that tone. So there's an awful lot of structure in soap. There's an awful lot of supporting documents. You know, you've got a storyline, you've got a whole Bible written, you know, you go through the year, you're plotting a story all the time. Yeah, I've got story literally going through me like Blackpool and stick a rock. Because you just have to do it, you just have to. And one of the biggest jobs on Holby, and certainly when I did Crossroads, because that was massive, that was 5 times a week. So we transmitted half our episodes 5 times a week. And I was commissioned to produce 250 episodes. And so you start the engine and you just have to go in the end and out the other side. And so every episode has to look the same, as like donuts with the hole in the right place, but it's got to be, each writer's got to want to write that, you know? So it's not joining the dots, it's a little bit different because it's such and such is writing it.
So on something like that, when you've got a number of script writers, is it literally one script writer per episode, or is it one script writer per storyline, or how do they?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, it's very often, because again, we're time, we may be cash rich if we're making a show like Holby, the budget's good, but we're really time poor, because there's never enough time to make it. So what producers tend to do is bleed a writer dry, frankly. A writer that's worth their soul, you know, will be able to have more than 2 homes and put all their children through private education, and many conservatories, because it's really good money if you proved yourself that you can work on a factory format like that and deliver great quality. So what I would do on Holby, I would send Martin Jameson, who still writes for it now, you know, he would be guaranteed to deliver a quality episode, there'd be no crying, he wouldn't be late, you know. So I'd give him 2. I'd give him 2 because it would mean I had a little breather. And that's what you tend to do. You tend to build up a stable of writers that can deliver more than 1 episode at once.
So you've got writers writing episodes
all different stages,
all the time.
All different times. Oh my god, yeah.
So it's not linear. It's
no, it's layered like that. It's like that. When I was on EastEnders, I worked when it was twice a week, transmitted twice a week. Now it's double, it's 4 times a week. But twice a week, it meant that at one point I had 10 writers, all at different stages, so the scripts had colour coordinated. Oh no, it's just, I know. I can't believe I did it looking back at it, I can't even add up. But yeah, you sort of get used to it. It's like I say, it's a factory format. You know, you're in conveyor belt territory. And you very quickly, you know, a certain colour of pale blue, like Michael's trousers, remind me of second drafts. That's the colour of EastEnders second drafts. And it was, you could see it a mile off, so you knew at any one shape or form on your table how late you were. Because you know, you could see just by the colour that that script should not be that low down on the process. It should be here, it should be pink by now. You know, so there's all those sort of things.
I remember EastEnders used to throw in the odd episode, which would suddenly be a 2-handle. How was that then?
Yeah, I did one of those EastEnders, yeah.
Because those are the ones that sort of stand out, but then as somebody that just watches regularly at that point, you'd be slightly uncomfortable because all your format, all the things you used to were unusual. And then you get the drama and the acting quality at a different level. And by the end of it, you're like,
yeah, it would be Doc. We did it for June Brown. She was just marvellous. Not all soap actors can carry the 2-hander, but yeah, some of them would. And we used to do it as a little gift to them, but also that, for instance, would have to be plotted at least 6 months in advance. So the audience wouldn't be shocked because we would be taking them through the storyline to the point where everything fell away and there was just Dot and her son, you know? And we'd orchestrate that from day one.
So it's that early.
Yeah. When you're plotting story on soap, you are at least long-term story. You're 6 months ahead of anyone in the country watching it.
So what do you do if an actor dies?
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Somebody suddenly, something where they've been taken off air or what,
I know.
Space.
Yeah, well, things like that happen all the time. You know, people have lives, and you're like, what do you mean you've got to go to a funeral? You know, but it doesn't happen.
So you're writing rounds?
Yeah, you'd have to. Yeah, you do all-nighters basically. You know, you bring in the writer.
I seem to remember it. I can't remember the actual story, but you go, oh, they've obviously gone on holiday. What do you know? They've obviously had a bit of time off.
Yeah.
Something not there.
When I was starting on EastEnders, I did learn the job literally on the hop because there was no training. The real horror for us was babies. If there was a baby in the story or a young, someone below the age of 5, you could only use them on camera for like really short amounts of time. And there's one episode that I script edited this. Well, we used to script edit in blocks, so I had four. You used to shoot four a week, 4 episodes a week. So it's like, and you have 4 that you're looking after. And in that block of episodes, Martin, who was a baby then, who was Pauline and thank you. Jesus, but then Pauline and Arthur's baby, Martin. She took him upstairs and then she just did not bring him down. Not for the whole block. And we worked out the time. I know. And I was like, and then it was one of the directors on this block of episodes said to me, so in the story, where's Martin? And I went, hey, where's Martin? And I tracked it through and I thought, well, he's been up there for at least a week. That's the sort of thing.
So going back to you just said you were at the deep end. What was your career before that, or why did you get into this? Where does it happen?
It's
Because if you're talking to young people, obviously people that we've got children that are growing up and might be interested in doing this or writing their own stories or doing their own. What's the way into it?
It's a bit like that path I drew. You know what I mean? It's circuitous. Nothing is ever direct.
But even now, is there not more of
what I did, well, I was an actress for 5 years, and then I thought, I am none of this. And at the time, I just thought I'd do anything, right? So I started literally going, because there's no internet, knocking on physical doors in the BBC. And me and my friend, who were living in Deptford at the time, formed a company called the Deptford Wives. This is because we just loved our film. And when we looked at it, and we were in the pub and I went, well, we're going to book a company because that's a brilliant name. And we found a theatre above a pub in Deptford, it still does it now, the Bird's Nest. And we used to do these script in hand readings. So that is how I got in, basically. I was going to read you a bit, but I knew there wasn't time. It's about networking, about what this is about, really. But at the time, I didn't know I was networking. I was just in the Bird's Nest, drinking and talking to other writers and producers and people that had come across the river, because we were in the south. People would come from the posh bit, like from Highbury and what have you, to come and hear these plays being read, see these plays being read. And it was from that I eventually got into EastEnders. But I did it, honestly, by sheer tenacity. Because at the time, it was Oxbridge was where people went. You went to Oxford or Cambridge, you went into the BBC. And I was like this gobby northerner, I didn't do any of that. But what I knew was story, and I really got it. And I think I didn't realise I knew particularly, I just had that innate ability, and so they gave me a chance.
So have you got books, courses, if anyone's interested?
Right, yeah, I mean, this is the book. This is I wrote this in 2014. You get it on Amazon. It's published by Creative Essentials. The thing about this book, it's written how I talk. So that's why I read that bit to you. It's all about my world. If you want to write for television, this will show you how to do it, simply, easily. It's not easy, but you know, it's clear. And so it's now a set text for 2 MA courses, one that's run out of the Cardiff University and one London College of Communication. Both of them do MAs and both of them have this on their curriculum. So, and also actually, if you like Sally Wainwright, she's a mate, she let me put the first 10 pages of her script. Did you see Last Tango in Halifax? Well, it's in here, where it's called Antony and Cleopatra, before it went further on his journey. So I'm going to have to get my little boy to bed. He's looking like he's going to fall off the chair. But it's been lovely. Thank you so very much.